They're gonna make me walk away from all this money. Can we not just write one good storyline? Does everything have to be fucking stupid?
So for the past few days, I was really thinking about it, and man, I really miss Dean Ambrose in WWE. Like, Moxley is a different beast entirely, but Dean was my guy. He was easily my favorite member back in the Shield days, and even after, he was just special. He won the WWE Championship and beat some of the biggest names in the industry. But in 2019, he left the WWE completely. Why did this happen? Well, be patient and I'm gonna take you back. But let's go back a little bit, shall we? So back in the day in like 2010, the WWE was trying to fix their developmental system, and they stuck with a thing called NXT. It was a cringy game show, but it would be changed to a serious training ground in 2012. Grinding through the ranks were three guys named Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose. These three would debut on the main roster together as The Shield. These guys changed the industry. They debuted in the main event, and they stayed in the main event their entire careers. They played their roles perfectly. Dean was the crash-out secret weapon, Roman was the powerhouse that could turn up at any moment, and Seth was the high-flying architect who I feel always carried a compass for some reason. And they took over. The Shield at first were meant to protect CM Punk, but over time they were taking dudes out and dogging them. Their first major match will be at TLC against Ryback and Team Hell No. They started off with a bang, and they would go on a crazy undefeated streak. At WrestleMania 29, they faced the random-ass team of Big Show, Sheamus, and Randy Orton. This match wasn't too crazy, but it just kept upping their momentum. At the next episode of SmackDown, Dean would face The Undertaker in a 1v1. Facing Undertaker in a 1v1 in 2014 on a weekly show is nuts. Nobody gets to do that. And it was his singles debut. He would lose, but it was still very important. But there's a reason why WWE chose Dean to be the singles guy out of the group. Because out of the three guys at the time, Dean was the most polished. On the mic, he had a very melodical, eerie tone to him that just made him stand out. But at Extreme Rules, the Shield would get juiced out to the max when Roman and Seth won the tag titles and Dean won the US title. This would be the start of Dean's record-breaking super long US title run. The Shield was on top and undefeated. However though, on June 14 SmackDown, they lost. Daniel would tap out Seth to a crazy pop. The Shield would go on a rampage, and in August, they would join the Authority. The Shield were just too OP at this point. They would be bullying everyone, and were even doing 11v3 handicap matches. It was nuts. But who could forget when the Shield faced Cody Rhodes and Goldust? Probably one of the best tag matches I could ever remember seeing. The Shield would also be in the Survivor Series tag team, and Roman at the end would get the win. But let's go to the Royal Rumble 2014. Roman would dominate the Rumble and even eliminated Seth and Dean and came up short to Batista, who won it. Crazy the difference a year makes. But that was a problem because Roman eliminated his brothers. Even though they tried to get him first, they still were not going to let that slide. But anyways, their next feud was legendary. The Shield versus the Wyatt family. This match was super hectic. You need matches like these. The Shield lost though as Dean disappeared into the crowd. They were planting the seeds. A lot of people originally thought that Dean was going to be the one to do the turn here because at this time, he was such a loose cannon. They were showing cracks in their foundation. But on March 17th, 2014, their trajectory would change forever. The Shield would be in the ring with Kane, and he wanted them to attack Jerry Lawler. They refused. The mood changed. They turned around. Kane was alone and trapped. Fans in the arena were clamoring, commentators aroused, and the Shield finally turned face. They've been chewed up, spit out, and booed off stage. But they immediately became the biggest face group in the company. At WrestleMania 30, for some reason, they faced The Office. But it didn't matter. Their presence was felt everywhere they went. The Shield would go on to beat them in a matter of minutes, and the next night, the Shield had a plan. It would be Triple H versus Daniel Bryan for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, and Daniel was getting ran down by the Authority. The Shield would come out, and it was about to go down. Triple H was trying to keep the peace, but when he went to turn around, Roman hit the warning blow. We know what they were setting up for. Triple H rallied his troops, and we were now in for a treat. Shield versus Evolution, two of the greatest groups in WWE history. Their first match would be at Extreme Rules, and after a gruesome battle, the Shield would reign victorious. Their next battle would be at Payback. Would Evolution get payback, or would the Shield prove it wasn't a fluke? Well, The Shield would sweep them and Evolution would get squad wiped. The Shield were up. They were on top of the world. But all good things must come to an end. The next night, Batista left. So Triple H had a light bulb on his dome, and he warned us and told us there's always a plan B. We would then find out there was a snake in the grass the whole time. Seth Rollins put a chair to his brother's backs for his own benefit. But take notes, guys. You might have a Seth Rollins in your circle. After this though, things would pick up for all three men. You have to go out anyway, so you might as well do it with a bang. They did it at a perfect timing where it was a shock and nobody knew it was coming, and their careers would just skyrocket after this. But Dean and Seth would mainly feud, and the WWE had bigger plans for Roman. But honestly, you could really tell Dean was the last priority out of the three for WWE. A few of the biggest names in wrestling didn't like him either. Infamously, Stone Cold looked very frustrated with Dean about his podcast, and Brock Lesnar definitely didn't like him based on what we know about their match at WrestleMania. But Dean would feud with Seth, and he would lose the majority of their matches against him. Seth would go on to win the Money in the Bank, and he was set to be a top guy. But let's fast forward a little bit to March 29th, 2015, Levi's Stadium. 67,000 people in attendance, WrestleMania 31. Dean would be the first member of the Shield on the card in a ladder match for the IC title, and this match was incredible. But unfortunately, Dean would lose. Seth would be next against Randy Orton. Seth would get put on a plaque, but they would have one of the most iconic match endings ever when Seth went for the curb stomp, but Randy would counter, rock him up, and catch him with an RKO. 0 for 2 so far. But next up was Roman in the main event with Brock Lesnar, his toughest challenge yet. This was their best match ever to date, but they would fight to the death. Then, the snake in the grass pulled back up, and he pulled up with a golden ticket in his hands. Seth hits Roman with a curb stomp. 1, 2, 3. The heist of the century. Seth Rollins was now WWE champion. He got rewarded for being a snake. What did Dean get for being loyal? Nothing. Life's not fair. But Dean would coast the year, but at the end of the year, he won the IC title. So he finally got something going for him. He was finally gaining momentum. 2016 would be Dean's best year yet. Seth has already reached the top and won the WWE Championship. Roman has reached the top and won the WWE Championship. But now, Dean was next up. At the 2016 Royal Rumble, the WWE Championship would be on the line, and Dean would go the distance. Unfortunately though, it wasn't enough. He came up so close yet so far. Yet again, Triple H was the one to hold him back. Triple H would eliminate Dean and kill his dreams. But at Fastlane, he'd get another chance. But the problem was he was facing two juggernauts, and one of them was his brother. It was Dean versus Roman versus Brock for a chance at the WWE World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 32. But once again, he lost. But the worst part is that he got pinned by Roman. What does Dean do from here? Well, for some reason, he faced Triple H for the title at Roadblock. They gave him his own pay-per-view just to get squashed. This is crazy. Nah, I'm playing, but yeah, he lost once again. At this point, it was grits for Dean, but he wanted to go out with a bang. Dean Ambrose for some reason challenged Brock Lesnar to a no-holds-barred street fight match at WrestleMania. Brock's straight hands is vicious, and now we can use weapons? Oh nah. I remember they hyped this match up so much. They had chainsaws, axes, like Michael Myers type of weapons, and all they used in the match was chairs. Lil Angie was pissed, bro. But anyways, the match would happen, and it was super disappointing. We later on found out that Brock didn't mess with Ambrose at all, and he barely gave him anything to work with.
I felt like I was pulling teeth to turn that match into something.
Did you see his performance on the Stone Cold podcast? You think actually he didn't come into the match with Brock Lesnar with the same attitude?
So yeah, these two basically just didn't like each other. But Dean would also lose this match as well. Dean would then start a feud with Jericho, and this was perfect for Dean. You need people like Jericho on your roster, and in WWE, he was perfect. He was super selfless, and he was a big name that could take a loss. He would go on to beat Jericho twice. Once at Payback, and once at Extreme Rules in an Ambrose Asylum match. In all honesty, this match was just decent. The idea of this match was fire, like we got a thumbtack spot and all that crazy stuff. But NXT would have a match like this down the line in 2019. So it was a good idea, but the execution wasn't that good. But now, it was time for Dean to turn up, and 2016 Money in the Bank would roll around, and Dean would get his hands on the coveted briefcase. But let's fast forward to the main event. Seth Rollins would face Roman Reigns for the WWE Championship, and these guys were slugging it out, and at the end, Seth would end up pinning Roman. Seth always beats Roman. But for Seth, shit wasn't sweet. Dean came out looking vindictive as ever, and Dean would put Seth down, and he was finally WWE Champion. Dean Ambrose has finally reached the top. All three members of the Shield not only all held world titles now, but they did it on one night. Surreal, incredible, undeniable, deserved. But now we get to the best part of 2016, the draft. The 2016 draft was magnificent, and the first pick of that draft was Dean Ambrose. Dean was split from Seth and Roman, and Dean was put to be one of the top guys on SmackDown, and it worked. 2016 SmackDown was an all-timer. Dean would mix it up with guys like AJ Styles, John Cena, Dolph Ziggler, James Ellsworth was in the mix, remember him? And we even got a Shield triple threat at Battleground. The only reason I remember this match is because I played a digital WWE card trading game called Slam, and one of the best cards was this beauty right here. Good times. But I'd say this run was pretty successful. It wasn't too long, he had some bangers, and he passed it off to AJ Styles, who went incredible other ways with this title as well. And now we get to 2017. 2017 will be a very rocky year for Ambrose. Dean will be moved to the pre-show at WrestleMania, and that was just a humbling blow. After this, he made the switch to Raw, and he'd be in a shitty looking feud with The Miz. The Miz was up on Ambrose. That was until someone would save Dean. Seth Rollins. Seth wanted to make amends, and Dean couldn't trust Seth though. Was it a setup? Why was he doing this? Well, over the coming weeks, the trust kept building and building. And on August 14th, Seth and Dean would argue and then start brawling. Dean is one of those like old school type of dudes where if you have beef, you scrap it out and settle it and shake hands afterwards. And basically the bar would come out and try to third party, but Dean and Seth popped them off. Fists were back in the middle, and the boys were back together. Seth and Dean would face the Bar at SummerSlam, and they ended up beating them for the tag titles. But the Shield had 3 members though. They needed the 3rd member back. On the October 9th episode of Raw, that would in fact happen. The Shield were back and they were ready to make the return as a trio. But unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. Roman would fall ill and would need to be replaced at TLC. You know, there would be some cool options as a replacement to be a one-time Shield member. Maybe Finn Balor, maybe Randy, maybe Dolph, I don't know, someone like that. Nope. Kurt Angle. This is literally the wackiest option possible, but it was awesome. There was so many great spots in this match, it was super fun, and our boys would get the win. This reunion wouldn't last though, because Dean would get a tricep injury and he'll be out for like 9 months. This shit was just cursed. The snake out of the group was the only one left still standing. I'm gonna let y'all decipher that one for yourselves. But fast forward to August 2018, Dean was back and he was jacked. This was far better than his other look, but his hair was so bad. But the thing about this timeline is it's so atrocious. I deadass had to stop watching. There's no other wrestler that would be a better indication of that than Dean Ambrose. The booking he received during this run was so bad it completely washed away his previous success. For all the casuals that ask, why are Roman and Seth thriving in WWE right now and Dean isn't? Well, shouldn't they all be thriving together? Well, yes, but the problem was Dean was always given the short end of the stick. Like, you could just tell with their booking decisions, they chose Seth and Roman every single time. But anyways, Dean and Seth would start a feud with Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre. They would face them at Hell in a Cell for the Tag Team Championships. But unfortunately, they would end up losing. After this, they would pick Roman back up, and it was going to be the Shield versus Braun, Dolph, and Drew. The Shield put belt to ass, but they would end up running this match back on Raw, and the Shield would lose this one, and after the match, Dean will walk out on his boys. Not this again, man. Why can't they all just get along? But once again, though, this reunion would be cursed again, as on the October 22nd episode of Raw, Roman announced that his leukemia came back, and he relinquished the Universal title. And you thought that was bad enough for the Shield. But on the same night, Dean and Seth would actually win the tag titles. Everything was looking good. But in a move that would shock the world, Dean Ambrose would get it back in blood, and he'd turn on Seth Rollins. This right here was incredible. But everything after this was just piss poor. You can tell over time by Dean's body language that he was just over it. Like, he was getting shots in his ass and wearing shitty Bane masks. Like, it was so cringy. But now, we're in December of 2018, and he really hasn't looked good since like late 2016. That would drive anyone crazy. They even wanted Dean to mock Roman's leukemia, and he refused. It was getting worse and worse. But at TLC, Dean would defeat Seth for the IC title, but it didn't even matter at this point. It was just too far, too late. And by this time, Dean Ambrose already made up his mind. The next night after the Rumble, Dean, Seth, and Triple H would have a segment, and Dean was just dropping gems, man. His mic skills on the way out were incredible. You could tell he was dodging all their scripts. But hours after Raw went off air, Dean informed WWE that he was not resigning. I feel like this completely shocked WWE. They did this whole, like, what I'd call it as a please don't leave us campaign, and Dean was not going for that shit. And they would even have another Shield reunion / farewell tour, but they were really treating this like a big deal because everybody thought Dean was going to be a WWE guy for life at this point. But this is a great example of you don't appreciate what you have until you lose it. A wise man probably said that back in the day, I don't know. But Dean's last match would be on April 21st, 2019, and it was the Shield versus Bobby Lashley, Baron Corbin, and Drew McIntyre. That shitty ass team. But the match would go on, the Shield won, and that was it. Was it a work? Are we being tricked? Well, we would all find out in a totally different company. May 25th, 2019, during a main event match with Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho, Jon Moxley would light up the wrestling world and attack both men. Dean Ambrose was dead. This was a new beast. Jon Moxley was born. He actually did it. He left WWE. He took the risk, and it paid off 10 times. I don't want to undercredit his AEW run. It has been nothing short of incredible. Jon Moxley is on the Mount Rushmore of AEW 100%. But man, I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss him. But after this, Jon will go crash out on a podcast like every bitter old head. I'm playing, but if there was anybody who deserved to do that, it was him. But from the clips I've seen, it was a fantastic podcast, so if you're interested, go watch it. But Mox said that he decided to leave after that horrendous segment where he got a shot in his ass. So if there was any casuals out there who ever ask, why did Dean Ambrose leave WWE? Well, in short, they took him for granted. And to my guys out there, before you try to treat your woman like shit, just think for a second, what would your life be like without her? But anyways, man, Dean made the right move. He bet on himself, he went to AEW, and the rest was history.